I'm just gonna wait an extra 10 seconds to make sure that I'm on air, because I was just told pre-start that I start way too early. So this is Rich back again with Exit the Podcast, and I'm here with...
Exit.
Oh, Exit the Donut. Why do I keep saying Exit the Podcast? What's the matter with me? Exit the Donut Podcast. Oh my goodness. All right, and I'm here with...
This is Amy.
Mike.
Oh. Competing for airtime.
Our timing is amazing this week. You know why? Because we're so anxious because, first of all, for those who don't know, we all just got back from a really, really great vacations. Mike and Amy were cool enough to come down with the family, the little Rugrats, and come down to Universal Studios, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but I will go ahead and say that we got into Diagon Alley before any of you suckers out there did, before it got stupid crazy with 375-minute wait lines and all that good stuff across. But we're definitely going to talk about theme parks today, about Diagon Alley. That'll kind of come later. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about Transformers: The Age of Extinction, which is the 4th installment. So rather than me start it off, you two just went and saw it literally about an hour ago. So first of all, I feel sorry for you. Second of all, Amy, let's go ahead and start off with you. What were your overall impressions of Transformers?
It was long. It was really, really long. No, I mean, it was exactly, I guess, what I at least expected. A lot of action and fight scenes, but very thin and weak plot. The characters, were not great. There's a couple really great actors. Kelsey Grammer is a phenomenal actor.
Oh, absolutely.
He is a phenomenal actor, but I don't think this was their greatest work by far at all. But I mean, so they had a lot of potential with the cast, but you can only do so much with a not great script,
Absolutely. Mike, what was your overall impression of the movie?
So I thought it was very long. It felt, honestly, at the end of what I guess is the second act, way before you get to the Dinobot part of the movie, it dawned on me that we hadn't seen Dinobots yet, and I really just wanted it to be over. It's not a good movie. It's just, there's nothing about it really that's good. If you like the Transformers movies, and I liked the first one a lot, the second and the third one were okay. It's exactly the same as those, except with a different cast. Almost like person for person, exactly the same. Mark Wahlberg is the sort of heroic guy that Shia LaBeouf became later in the second two films, and there's a juicy girl to look at without much on a lot of the time, like Megan Fox was, and there's a quirky scientist guy that Stanley Tucci plays that's a little more straight-laced than the what's his name, the Knish from Rounders, the goofy alien hunter government dude in the first three movies.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was basically standard fare. It was what you'd expect a Transformers movie to be, and except it was really, really long, because for some reason in this one they felt like they really needed to play up the emotional connections between all of the family members and set the stakes really high, and it worked so well that I really didn't give a shit if any of them died at the end. I was really rooting for someone to get hurt a little bit, at least. So
Sure.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
It was a long movie.
There's first of all, I already wrote a review about this almost like 10 days ago. Did you get a chance to read it, Mike?
I haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it. I didn't want to read it until I went and saw the movie, but
I think that's a good idea. I think you'll enjoy it. For those of you out there, please read my review. It's pretty awesome and epic. Well, not really epic, just awesome. And one of the elements that I think that I just had this vision in my head of when people get together to make a Transformers movies, and they're just like, what are we going to do this time? I know we're going to do dinosaurs. But yeah, how are we going to fit them in? I don't know. We're going to call the movie something with dinosaurs, but we just aren't going to introduce them until half an hour left in the movie or something like that. And like you were just saying, Mike, they were really, really trying to play up that, there was a really big in the original cartoon series. It was a guy and his son who befriended the Autobots, and I think the dad was pretty apprehensive first, and then later that son became like the dad, and like once they got into like later years in the cartoon series, and I felt that maybe they were trying to do that with this one. That's a very big element from the other one, is that parent role, which you really didn't get out of the first set of Transformers movies. It was really about a car and his relationship, a boy in his car in essence, because in a way the Bumblebee is childlike, even though they made him freaking huge in this one, not as lovable and compact as he is, because he was modeled after a beetle, if I'm not mistaken. So, this movie was just absolutely horrendous. I made a point in my review, and we'll get into this like a little bit, that this movie and Transformers 1 are in essence the exact same movie. I don't know when the last time you guys saw the first Transformers movies, but you basically have, like Mike was going through, you have your arch stereotype, and then they even do the same thing when what's his name, Shia LaBeouf gets Bumblebee. He's like old and ragged. When Marky Mark finds Optimus Prime, it's an old and ragged card. All of a sudden, they realize it's a Transformer. They both realize it. Then all of a sudden, they get like a modern look to like spiff themselves up. You got the same dumb character with Megan Fox, and I don't even remember the girl's name, Nicola or Nicole or something like that. And it's terrible. Stanley Tucci is John Turturro from the first movie.
Yes.
The guy who is the enemy, and then all of a sudden is best friends with everyone at the very, very end of at the very, very end. Who else was like the stereotype? There was even, for God's sake, there was even a bit at the beginning of the movie, like with Bernie Mac's character. Bernie Mac's character didn't really serve anything other than to kind of like play up the experience of why he had to buy the car. But they did the same thing in this movie. They got an African-American, actress to do something that has absolutely nothing to do with the plot, and kind of like beefs it up. Now, let me ask to both of you: did you guys notice, like, I think the cheap laughs on like race things were unbelievable. Did you guys feel that at all in this movie? Like, do you think they were just going for, like stereotypical things, or what?
Well, that's kind of Michael Bay's shtick, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what he does? He tends to exploit those type of, racial stereotypes and stuff like that for humor, but it's not really funny. I mean, it's like the cheap laugh kind of thing.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
You're exactly right, and I mean, even the way that they, for me too, like so the opening scene of the movie. You get the dinosaur stuff very, very briefly, but then they cut to this Arctic scene that's totally like you don't have any context at all. And I turned to Amy, and the first thing I said is, it's Lois Lane discovering Superman's ship, and then all of a sudden you see the fucking dinosaur, and it looks just like the ship. You see, and it's some chick with a bad attitude in the cold. All this, yeah, it's like, and can we just talk about how bad Michael Bay, if you want to rag on him for terrible filmmaking, I'm not going to stop you. But the one thing that he always has in every Michael Bay movie I've ever seen is very beautifully done, convincing visuals. Except the metal thing that is supposed to be what they're made of is so bad and so cheap and so cartoonish that it completely takes you out of the film.
Sure.
And that effect is used from starting about 35 or 40 or 50 minutes in until the end of the movie. It's used many, many, many times. And I don't remember when Transformers 2 came out. I want to say 1991, which is 23 years ago, something like that. The liquid metal Terminator is essentially the same effect. Yeah. Essentially exactly the same effect. And it is way more convincing in the Terminator 2 from when I was 10 years old than this was. And that, to me, was the most stunning thing of this entire deal. It's ridiculous.
It's gosh, what are the other things I could complain about? Touching on that stereotype thing, I remember when he brought in, I'm a guy who's really, really big into essence of the original character. By all means, if you want to take an artistic license or whatever, but don't destroy the thing that was bless you, by the way, which was the original intent of the character. So the character of Jazz, to me, like Jazz and Bumblebee were kind of like the quintessential Autobots underneath Optimus Prime, and they ruined Jazz by trying to make him like, what was his first line of the movie? Like, what's cracking bitches? Or something like that, where he went like all gay on everything. And then in this movie, the character of Swift or Crosshair, not Crosshairs, God, the name of the freaking, the one who's a freaking samurai.
Oh.
For God's sake, what's his name? Drift.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how ironic it is in this one, because I go, in the first one, like Jazz is obviously, you know, that African American, you know, like that rapper, like what's up, cracking, like whatever, you know, like he even like his poses, like that hip hop, you know, like kind of like little things you do. This one, I know that they were going for authenticity, but it's a Japanese actor, okay, playing a samurai that transforms into a car that is owned by a French company, which was in a city that was originally owned by the Germans, by an Italian designer. I mean, how freaking crazy or ironic are you just gonna, just for the sake of putting a car, like, now I did like the cars they put, that's about one of the only few things I liked in the movie. I really loved when they put the Bugatti, they put in the Lamborghini as like, I don't even know where he came out of, that character, like, I'm like, this guy is hunting for the Autobots. Like, there's nothing at all in any movie to tell me that there's something else like looking out for them. And he chooses a Lamborghini. And if I'm that robot who's chasing Autobots down with the humans, I'm thinking, hey, this is pretty terrible that I'm helping out people kill my own people or whatever. But, you know, they just kind of go along with it, and it kind of goes into the set. So, you know, Mike, I will give you great visuals and everything, but my God, let's talk about the dryness of some of the characters. So, Mike, we were touching on it earlier in the car, and here's my one wish for this movie. Is it that hard to get for a summer blockbuster movie in which there's a million of them now? When we were growing up, there was one. We talked about this at Universal. Would it hurt to get a girl who is actually intelligent, and her intelligence actually plays into the plot instead of being some kind of, I know it's Michael Bay, but why is it so hard for that concept to happen, Mike? What do you think so?
Yeah, so we talked about that on the way home. So I really thought it was going to be difficult for them to make Megan Fox's character seem like a strong female lead. And they like knocked it out of the park, because they turned Megan Fox into like a heroine, like a superhero, because she was so much less dependent on men for every little thing in her life than this girl was. I mean, she was literally incapable of anything at any time except for one, as Amy pointed out when we were talking about this, except for one very small moment in the middle of the movie with the least threatening-looking robot that they have in the entire film that she has to fight, and then 2 seconds later, it's daddy, daddy, daddy. And it's ass hanging out of shorts, daddy, 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 I love you, boyfriend, ass hanging out of shorts, daddy, 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 I love you, boyfriend. And it's awful. It's terrible and awful and horrible. And Lucy was a preview in our theater, which is like a female superhero, basically, right? Scarlett Johansson,
Right.
which, like, some shit gets put in her stomach and she like can turn on her brain or something. That looks cool because it's a girl not being completely beholden to men for everything that goes on in their life. You know, except apparently she can balance the checkbook and Mark Wahlberg can't. Other than that, it's entirely the man's world that she's living in.
Amy, did you feel insulted that she makes like what were your impressions? Like, was her character just so off the wall and just terrible? How about for being like a role model to like kids who are obviously a large part of the audience of this movie?
Right. Well, and like I said, you have to kind of go in expecting you're not going to get the strong, smart female role in this type of movie because it hasn't happened yet, so it's not like they're going to blow the doors open and just be like, all right, we're going to wow you. So I kind of, plus in the previews you saw what she looked like and how she was dressed, and in one of the opening scenes when her friends are dropping her off, Mike and I both look at each other and I'm like, not one hot girl, but 6 in the car.
Right?
So it's like, at every moment that they could exploit her for her body as opposed to her mind or whatever, they did. So, but there again, if it gets, people in the theater, I mean, clearly there's something there or people wouldn't see them. So, I guess we propagate the issue by continuing to allow them to make movies that portray women as the weak, weak personality that can't defend themselves or stand up for themselves or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, I knew going into it to expect that. I did think that the Chinese lady, she was kind of kick-ass, but she was always still kind of like, and I don't remember Stanley Tucci's character's name, but even then, like whenever he was around, like she might kind of tell him what to do, like get up on the roof, but like she still works for him, and I thought he worked for her. I thought she was like the money in the beginning. I thought she was like supporting his operation and funding him, and then she's like on the back of the motorcycle and he's behind her and she's like I want a raise. It's like, oh, she works for him? That's not what I thought at all. So,
You made a good point, though, about us keeping to support these things. I mean, I go see a lot of movies twice. I won't watch this movie again if it's on television. But this was the biggest opening of the year. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a really spectacular film. It's one of the best movies I've seen in the last few years, and it has a very strong female character. And it's the #1 movie of the year so far, but this movie beat it over the weekend. How to Train Your Dragon has good, strong female characters in it throughout, and it's doing okay. It's a successful film, but it's greatly disappointed. Even X-Men, whatever, Days of Future Past, while there wasn't the female character was still kind of battling for the affections of 2 different men in the majority of that film, you still have she's got more depth than this, and that didn't do as well as this. So what we are telling Hollywood as audiences is, yes, if you give us a chick with really short shorts and a bunch of guys saving her for 2.5 hours, we're gonna reward you with our money, and that's crazy. So if anybody's listening to this and you want women to be portrayed in a way that's not, and one of my sayings is that all men are pigs and there are no exceptions. I like good-looking women in the movies, and short shorts are fine with me. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, Lucy appears, and I haven't seen it. It appears to be a female-led superhero movie.
Sure.
So go see it, because if it's successful at the box office, we'll get more. We'll get Wonder Woman. We'll get Black Widow. We'll get Captain Marvel. We'll get other female-led movies where the woman can be attractive and she can be sexual and she can be whatever she wants to be, but she doesn't only have to be that.
Right. I'll go ahead. Mike, I think that evolution of when it comes to movies of having a strong, I don't think it's too far around the corner, because when I was growing up, the first female superhero that everyone kind of knew about was Wonder Woman, right off the bat. Like, even though you saw her like on Justice League or Super Friends, I guess, as it were. I remember when She-Ra came out, to be like the antithesis of He-Man, even though that was it, instead of the power of Grayskull, it's by the grace of Grayskull,
honor
is it
Grayskull.
honor? I'm very happy one of us knew that. That's pretty awesome.
Well, my son loves He-Man, and we watched all of them over again. And Morgan actually even likes She-Ra. So.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I found a trend. So if all these movies, so we've seen all these comic movies that have come up lately. So all these properties, definitely after X-Men, the success of like the first X-Men, like the Blade movie, you had all these things come up for for picking up those properties. The things that came afterwards in the comics afterwards were very, very, very female-driven characters. Now, we've had some people who have already had a couple successes with having strong female leads, like Joss Whedon. Like, have you ever, Amy, have you ever watched Buffy at all?
Yeah. When it first came out, I watched like probably the first season or two.
Yeah. He does a pretty good job.
It got a little weird, but
no lie, absolutely got weird. But I mean, I think Joss Whedon is more suited to making ensemble pieces. Like, he's really good at. That is awesome.
By the honor of Grayskull.
Like the big, she was cute, man. I remember She-Ra. You know, she was really awesome. And I remember in the comics there were three. I remember like it was always DC and Marvel, and then came out. Gosh, and for those of you, I'm about to geek myself out here a little bit. Image, which was made by Todd McFarlane, was kind of like the third company to kind of like break the mold with Spawn. And then you had other companies like Top Cow and who came out, or in Wildstorm and all these other companies. I remember characters like, have you guys ever heard of Witchblade?
no.
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it.
You know, Witchblade was a very hyper-sexualized, like, you know, version of this girl who basically, and there was actually even a TV show on TNT for a little while called Witchblade, which I encourage you, if you can find it out there, go watch it. It's a great culture piece. And then there was another great comic by called Fathom, which is based on a female character named Aspen, and there was another one, Tomb Raider. They all lived in the same universe, and they kind of got it right with Angelina Jolie, but not really. They could have done a much better job. So I do think that, you know, with all these properties, I think those other things will come into play. We'll see what they do with the property Gem. Have you guys seen the trailer to Gem coming out? Gem and the Hologram?
I haven't seen the trailer, but I heard that they're making it.
Yeah.
Right, so the trailer hasn't come out yet. I think the only thing that's come out is like the poster, but they've already, you know, that's going to be an interesting way because that was like the glam show of the 80s. I'm actually really, really anxious to see how much you're going to update it because you have 4 girls. It's kind of like, the 4 is like the magic number. You got like what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out with, guess who? Megan Fox. I mean, but then you're also going to have the Gem, which is like your 4 major characters who are all like ethnic. You know, or the 2 of them at least are of like an ethnic variety, and then you got the bad girls and all that good stuff. So I'm actually anxious to see what's going to come out with those. What's going to come up with those ones. Now, did you guys see any other? First of all, before we go on, any last impressions about Transformers you want to tell about to people out there at all? Or
Yeah, I have one question because
Yes.
nothing in this movie made any freaking sense. Not 1 second of it. Since when can Optimus Prime fly into space on his own?
Oh my
And if
god!
he can do that, why on God's green earth is he driving around everywhere in a diesel truck?
If he can fly, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
let's choose the slowest possible route over the land here instead of flying there.
It's so the logic of this movie is it just makes me want to cringe. I have a couple things in my review about how the girl. I remember that she's like, I can't believe we just left your best friend who died, and he called the people, and then she yelled at her dad later for not calling the hotline. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you're upset at your dad because you left his best friend behind who did make the phone call to have these people come, but then you're going to yell at your dad later for not making the phone call. They thought you would have been better.
Yes, but how about, so basically the dad is me, right? He's a computer nerd, inventor, software geek, right?
In Texas,
somehow in the middle of the frickin' movie, he transforms into a Navy SEAL capable of killing in hand-to-hand combat
absolutely.
the best guy in the U.S. military.
Absolutely.
With a football!
With a football. And he's like, oh, alien weapon? No problem. I got it covered, all right?
Well, the thing that got me even more so than that, because to me, Mark Wahlberg at that moment was playing his character, who he always plays, the badass, and for them to portray him as this like geeky science inventor guy was so out of character for what you expect from him. But the scene that got me was when him and the girlfriend's or his daughter's boyfriend were flying the spaceship. Suddenly they're able, even though all they know is thrust, slide, drive, whatever it was that they kept repeating, they can like fly through the tunnel unscathed, while these other ones are like born to do this.
Right.
Knocking into things and blowing up, and I'm like, really? These two guys who have never flown before suddenly are like geniuses.
Everything in the whole movie, every robot is aiming just to the left or just to the right of their target, because they blow some crazy shit up all over the place, but they never hit anyone. I mean, you see, it's like pew pew pew, and they're just running. And let's just hear She-Ra. You got She-Ra. Pew pew pew, but it's never on the freaking character. No one gets hurt except the funny guy.
You know what I'm thinking?
Melted into some gooey oozing nastiness, which is really gross.
And I'm thinking, Optimus Prime can fly. Why the fuck is everyone dive rolling? Like, not even a little bit. Like, this Transformers, I go, why are you just hide behind the building? Or, I don't know, transform and go away and then fire. Like, how many times can you dive roll? I'm like, you're the fucking size of, like, a 3-story house. You're gonna dive roll to avoid shit? Fuck you, you're gonna get hit. Oh, I'm so sorry.
And that cool, that metal that, like, could transform into anything, that they could program it into, it was really cool. That was a really neat idea. And in Terminator, when they used it, all the weapons and, like, it would point out at you with the little needles, and they didn't take any advantage of that at all. What they did was, oh, this is really cool. You can manipulate this material to make it do anything you want. So we're going to make it look exactly like all the other Transformers you've ever seen.
Exactly.
We're not going to make it do anything interesting at all. Not even, like, go through a vent or down a drain or through a doorway. Nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Even though the first robot, I think Galvatron, which was an interesting way to bring in the character of Galvatron. Galvatron had quite a bigger entrance in the Transformer animated movie of our youth, but he avoided all that gunfire in the beginning, and all of a sudden they couldn't do it at the end. Like, I don't understand. And then Galvatron kind of escapes away, like, hoo, no one sees me walking away. I'm the size
for like 30 minutes.
I'm the size of an Empire State Building, and no one's going to see me go off in a country that has the most people per capita of any country in the United States. No one sees a giant Galvatron like leaving, but whatever. So anyway, guys, obviously I'm going to make a plea here to not go see this movie. Please wait and it comes out free before you spend your money to go see it. I mean, if you're going for like nonsensical violence, whatever, awesome, but I would think that most people want a little more substance, and unfortunately this movie just plays into a bunch of stereotypes. You get your typical same Michael Bay movies. Like, he does like this thing where, like, there's this character, he does this, there's a shot of every single character in this movie, and they kind of rise up like this. And it's that same shot he does in every one of his movies, and he does like these same track shots, and it's unbelievable. It's a mess. But if you guys want to go check it out, please, by all means, let us know how awful you think the movie is. All right, guys. Moving on to our next subject over here. So, guys, I will let me ask you a question. When you guys first came down here, what was the initial reasoning? Because usually we went to like Disney. Why did you guys want to go to Universal this time around?
I think we wanted to do something different. We had gone to Disney the last 2 years, so my kids are a little older. My daughter, who's almost 8, is pretty tall for her age, so we thought maybe she might get more enjoyment out of some of the roller coasters and stuff. And something different, something that we had done. The first year we only did 3 of the Disney parks, so we still had one that we had not been to. So last year we got that one, so something different.
Yeah, and then Amy, this was actually your first time to come around. This is actually your first time coming to Universal Studios altogether, right? So It's like overall impressions. Like, what did you think of like the theme park? Because this will kind of tie into. We'll get into a conversation about Harry Potter in this series, but did you have certainly? Because I think the theme of your trip was just missing things ever so slightly. So I know that you guys we were just missing the official opening of Diagon Alley, which we're kind of really happy about. You were just missing Marvel Live, which by the way I have tickets to for this Friday night. Don't hate me.
I don't want to hear it. We're not friends anymore.
It's gonna come. It's gonna come to St. Louis, right?
In like January, I guess.
Not till next year.
I didn't know that. I feel bad. I'll fly you guys out here, but
No, you don't.
what did you think about like the theme park, like versus like you've been to Disney, obviously, right?
I've been to Disney like 3 or 4 times. The last time was when I was like 12 or 13.
Okay.
So I mean, it's a distant memory. I mean, I remember certain rides that I really liked, but I'm sure it's very different from when I was there last. But I mean, when Mike and his mom and his sister and all that started talking about the trip, I was just like, well, whatever you guys want to do. I think anything would be fun. I hadn't been to Universal and I hadn't been to Disney in 20-something years, so I was like, I'm game for anything. And then when they decided to do Universal, I started like looking up stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like not at all what I was thinking, because I'm like, it's a lot of 3D stuff. And my last experience with a 3D ride was, I don't even remember where it was. I'm sure it was at Disney, and it was horrible.
Really?
20 years ago. So, I mean, obviously we've come a long way. And some of my favorite rides or experiences at Universal were the 3D rides. So, I mean, I was completely blown away. I thought it was a great experience. I would totally recommend anybody to go, if, assuming that your kids are old enough to do a lot of the stuff. I thought it was a great experience. And there was the only thing that I really was not a huge fan of that we did, and it wasn't bad, but just in comparison, would be the Twister thing. I didn't think it was all that great.
Absolutely.
But I also know it's not a new experience. That's been there for years, and so it's not going to be as great as some of the newer stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
The Twister actually occupies the space back in Universal Studios. That used to be a Ghostbusters attraction, where they reenacted the entire scene from the first movie where they fight Gozer.
Okay, yeah.
Which I thought was a pretty cool experience, and they actually used a great camera trick for the show to use like the energon beams and whatever, the proton packs. If you've ever heard of it, Pepper's Ghost is a technique for like bouncing a light off of glass. So a perfect example is the Haunted Mansion at Disney, where like the ghost can kind of be seen sitting in certain spots, but then all of a sudden they go away.
Yeah.
That's what that ride used the most, and a lot of that is actually used. We'll talk about Pepper's Ghost. It's used a lot. So, but Mike, I know that you were also upset because what attraction was missing from Universal Studios that you absolutely adore?
Well, there's a few that were missing that I really adore. But I mean, I really like Back to the Future. And so, I miss that, and then they turned it into a Simpsons ride is, disappointing because I'm not a big Simpsons fan. What I will say is the Back to the Future ride always used to make me a little queasy, though. It was not the most stable ride. And what I also will say is, for the people that are listening here, my daughter is pretty tall, and my son was just barely big enough to do a ton of stuff there. So if you are thinking about going to Universal, measure your kids first and then look at the maps, because if your kids are under about 42 or 44 inches, it's basically a waste of your time, and you really probably want them to be more like 53 or 54 inches tall.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Now, what's the other big attraction that you were missing besides Back to the Future? Jaws. Yeah, I totally forgot because I was so disappointed because it was, and they didn't replace anything with it. There's nothing even there. Yeah, there's nothing even there. Well,
and it was there. It was there recently because Morgan went when she was about 5.
Yeah,
and it's still there.
But you know what it replaced though, right? Replaced that area, right?
What?
Diagon Alley.
Oh.
Diagon
Fair
Alley is
point.
black. And so for those who are wondering what happened to Jaws and why they got rid of such a you know, for those who haven't been to Universal Studios, probably when that park first opened up, probably the three main attractions were King Kong, which is now occupied by Mummy, Earthquake, which is still there, but they've rebranded it as a disaster show, which Mike and I were
Yeah.
villains for in the pre-show, much to the delight of Amy and the kids. And then the last one, of course, is Jaws, which went away fairly quickly to make room for the new Diagon Alley. So for those of you who don't know, Diagon Alley has officially opened up at Universal Studios Orlando this Tuesday. And if you've seen any of the stuff online, I think if you guys know this theme park, to just get into Diagon Alley, the line wrapped all the way back to Men in Black. Between Men in Black and Diagon Alley, there's two other shows. There's like a Fear Factor thing, and then there's also like another like little like stand thing. And then you have like Diagon Alley. Now, Mike, Amy, and I think we were walking back from Disaster towards like, and we were planning.
Men in Black, I think, and we were gonna do The Simpsons and Men in Black.
Right, and we're like, let's go ahead and repeat those rides because we knew that Mike's son really, really enjoyed the Men in Black ride, and that's a fantastic ride. First of all, it's a lot better than Buzz Lightyear's shooting attraction, I think, because because it's bigger. I think the concept of Men in Black is a lot better. And then, of course, Diagon Alley is like so overall impressions, guys. Like, what did you think about like? It was like the first night of the soft opening. Like we're some pretty lucky bastards or something because you see how crazy it is now. So what were your overall first impressions when you first walked in? And I think Amy might have just a tad more enthusiasm because she knows the movies and the books a little bit more better than Mike. Am I right?
Yeah, but I would actually be more interested to know what Mike thought because with you and me, like the book and the stories and having watched all the movies, visually we have a much better impression of what it should have looked like. So I'm more curious about somebody who coming from the outside, what their impression of it was. Because I mean, and then
Mike, what did you think?
Yeah, so I have seen the first three movies, and I have not read any of the books. So I don't have a lot of understanding of it at all. It was probably the single most impressive theme park exhibit I've ever been to in my life. The level of detail on everything was amazing. I did know, because I think you go into it in the first movie. I think they show them in the first movie when they go get their wands or something. They go in there for some reason.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, and I do remember them kind of like sneaking back there and you not being able to see into it until you get into it. And I thought it was really neat how like there's no sign. There's nothing telling you that Diagon Alley is there. And I knew that that's how it is in the books and in the movies, but I expected, because it's a freaking theme park, for them to have a giant Diagon Alley this way sign. There's nothing. It looks like London. You see the triple-decker bus. There's some other stuff. There's a fountain and some other stuff around. But then there's it passes on, and you vaguely see this brick wall that looks kind of a little bit funny. And when we went in, because we were probably there within the first 20 or 30 minutes that it had been opened.
Sure.
Because there were probably 50 people or so milling about in the London part of it. And then once we got back into Diagon Alley, there were maybe 100, 150 people in there when we first got in. By the time we were leaving, there were probably 1,000 people or more in there. But it was so cool how you go in and you don't even notice it's there, and then when you go in, it opens up and it really is magical. It really brings to life this world, and it matches the tone and the visuals of the movie just in the same way I would say that Hogsmeade does at Islands of Adventure. Very interesting. The dragon on top of, is it the bank?
Green God.
The dragon's on top of. That breathed fire was amazing. They have that back alleyway where we took the kids to use their magic wands that was really cool. The fountains, everything was really neat, and of course Ollivander's, being able to just get into Ollivander's was kind of amazing. But it was very, very, very cool. I was very impressed. And if you are planning to go, don't wait until like the lunatics have gone a few times, because it's insane to go right now. But it's very cool if you're going anywhere near there. It's definitely worth it, especially I would assume if you've seen the books or seen the movies and read the books and are enthusiastic about it.
Now, Amy, so you and I are definitely fans of the movies. We're definitely fans of the book, and it's obviously, like with any kind of interpretation, it's really, really hard to, what material do you keep in, what material do you keep out. Have you guys gone back and seen the first time that they go to Diagon Alley? I recently watched the first movie, The Sorcerer's Stone, and it's pretty much verbatim. Like when you go into Diagon Alley, like where Gringotts is, like obviously a little more narrow, but so they had to widen it, to accommodate the Muggles. But what was your first impression being a fan of like the movie? Like how did it strike you when you went in there?
Yeah, it was funny because it's been so long since I've read the series, I've read the book series probably 3 times through, but it's been several years, and it's been probably 3 or more years since I've seen any of the movies. I remember in the first movie them going to Diagon Alley, and he gets his books, and he gets Hedwig, and he gets all of his stuff and his trunk and everything, and they go to Gringotts, and he gets into his vault. So I remembered all that, but visually I didn't remember what all was in Diagon Alley. And then you get introduced to Nocturne Alley, which Mike mentioned about later on in the book series, when that's where they find the disappearing the cabinet, where you can, it lets you into the castle and all that with Malfoy. So that was very cool. I love that they had that as well, and I love that the not only visually was it incredible and all the shops and stuff, it was very detailed, but the people that were working that area were in character the entire time. Because I remember I was trying to ask one of the witches in Nocturne Alley, I was like, are we doing the right thing? And she's like, oh, she stayed in character, and she was like talking to me. She's like, I said something. I was like, is this one of the things that the wands, one of the magical things? And she's like, oh, we only practice dark magic in here. And like she's going on. And I'm like, no.
And I appreciate that so much.
Can you tell me if this is right? And she was like completely in character, and I'm like, but that's great. That's what you want when you're going to have that type of experience. You don't just want people like talking to you like normal.
Plus, they did a good job of I thought responding to because there were a lot of people in there to help and kind of guide you, and I mean we were the first people in there. I mean there weren't more than, like I said, a couple hundred people that had been in there for maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 45 minutes before, and they were very, very good already. So I assume by now it's been almost a week.
Sure.
That they're better.
Oh, sure. Even after you guys left, selfishly, I went back, to see, and I showed my family who was at the theme park at the same day. I went in there, and they let us stay till like 11 o'clock at night. I mean, the theme park closed at like 10, but they really, really let us stay for a while, like in the theme park, just to really take it all in. And you could see even like after like we were done, they were having like meetings with everyone, like, hey, how did it go? Like here, let's make sure that we keep doing this. That. Yeah. Again, the detail. I thought the way that they had designed it, there's always, it's like it prompted you to explore. You wanted to see what was down this way. I didn't even know Nocturne Alley was where it is until like you see that sign that says Nocturne Alley, and I'm like, oh my goodness, they've actually even included like this one. And by the way, I went in there and I got a picture of the what do you call that? The big thing.
Cabinet.
Yeah, I did find it, and I'll send you a picture of that one as well. I was like, ooh, I found it. I got to take a picture for Amy and Mike. And I think that was like the following night that I actually found it. But you watch the movies and you wonder, it's. How are they gonna pull it off? And I thought they did a great job with Hogwarts already at Island Adventure, but what a bold concept to when they did Diagon Alley, because it connects the 2 parks in such a way that I think is ingenious. Is it a money-making scheme? Absolutely, because you do have to have a park-to-park pass if you want to ride the Hogwarts Express. But they said the same thing. J.K. Rowling actually said in an interview that they wondered, well, how come if you can only ride the train, how come it shouldn't be in Diagon? She said because that's not how it is in the books. She goes, in the books you have to come out of King's Cross, and it's not near Diagon Alley. So you do have to come back out to London before you do go into the series. I thought that was a really, really bold. For those of you who don't ride the Hogwarts train that links the park, I thought it was just going to be a train to go back and forth. First of all, the Pepper's Ghost technique, they have a thing where you actually rush through the platforms between 9 and 3/4, where you actually run through a brick wall. Great effect. Mike, I remember, what were your first impressions when we actually walked in to see the Hogwarts train? Did it just blow you away, how it looked like inside there? What did you think of that particular aspect? And then both of you, I want to hear your impressions of the actual train itself.
Yeah, it was very cool. Both. So the first one that we did was from Hogsmeade to London. So we went in at the the magical side station, right. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautifully done. And the train looks amazing. It's just very, very well done. And then when we came back after having gone through Diagon Alley, the London terminal is hysterical. It looks just like a London terminal. And complete with all the baggage carts and everything. And the train itself was great too. It's a very well done ride. It's going to do very well. It's a little, it's a little low intensity for how long it probably will take most people to get to do it. But it's really, really neat. And the journey on the train with the story that's told both on the train itself, outside your door, and then through the sort of window where they play you the sort of story as you're going from one station to the other, and how they change. It's very neat. It's really cool, and very well done. Very well done. And you're right, they're going to make a killing because everybody's going to buy 2 passes now.
Okay, so and here's what happened. So Amy, do you recall the conversation that we had earlier during the day about if your kid gets chosen for the Ollivanders show, you have to buy them a wand.
I think you might have actually had a conversation with Mike, because I don't recall that. But as soon as we went in that room, I'm like, nope, it's a given.
Right. So we didn't have.
But I honestly thought, well, maybe she gets the wand, because I was like, well, maybe they'll give it, and I'm thinking, why would they give it to you? Of course,
Universal Studios is the Universal Studios, the magical land where nothing is free.
Yeah.
And we were, I remember we were just joking about that, and I thought that's why we were talking about because the first series of wands that came out were absolutely useless.
Right.
And then I said I'd buy the wand, and I said this before. I go, if it could actually do something. So all throughout, Universal Studios and Hogsmeade and Islands of Adventure, there are little hot spots, and there's even a couple hidden spots where you take these new special wands, which cost $15 more, so they're $45 a piece, and you can actually flish and swick. You don't have to send their name, and it'll react with the environment. And I think that level of interaction, Universal has to play it so smart because they don't have the space to play that Disney does. I'm sure if Disney had the rights to Universal Studios, I bet they would try to make all the outdoor scenery. Oh, okay. Which ones is whose on there?
So that's Morgan's.
Uh-huh.
They're they are really neat. And they, again, coming from somebody who's not a big Harry Potter person, and although I probably should be, given my Lord of the Rings.
And your son really dug the story at the end.
And the cool thing is like you mentioned, the way that they interact. They have these little sensors on the front that interact with light cameras that detect if you've done the motion in the right manner in front of all the various places around the area where you can do the magic. Very, very neat, very smart.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very neat factor, and it's like their summer. It's going to be such a huge draw. I think it's going to be drawing in. Amy, did you read that article earlier where J.K. Rowling released a story?
I saw it. I have not read about it yet, but I got a little excited about it. I was like, well, let's see what happens. And I'm excited about the possibility of them doing, I guess it's been greenlit, the magical creatures. movie, and doing more with that, because those were some of I love that type of, you know, those parts of the book. But going back to the train, I remember, because Mike and I got to ride the train by ourselves the second morning because we were going to pick up the kids from their character breakfast.
Sure.
And I remember we were standing in line, and I said something, I was, you know, of course I got a little excited and, you know, nerdish. And I was like, I turned to him, I go, oh my gosh, I'm like, I wonder if they'll have the trolley car. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no. I'm like, there's a witch that comes through with a trolley car with all like the chocolate frogs and the birds, you know, jelly beans and all that stuff. And he's like, well, it's probably not a very long car or train ride. I can't imagine that they'd have time to like stop and sell you stuff. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm like, because the train scenes in the book and in the movie were always very important to the whole, you know, that was like what set the stage for the theme of the movie and the story. And so much happened on the train. And I love that they had that she comes through and you see her silhouette through the glass. And then you see the Dementors come in, because that happens in one, I don't remember which book that is, that the Dementors come in 2 or 3 or something. But it's like all those little moments, they were able to captivate, you know, and like bring you into the moment without even having to do a whole lot. So I thought the train was very cool.
You know, that's probably one thing, you know, man, I go, you know, I always think, because Disney for the longest time had that really, really big hold on on really captivating the audience. And I really think Universal Creative, which is Universal Studios' version of Imagineering, the ones who comes up with the writing concepts, I think they're giving them a hell of a battle this year. Because that's a very interesting way, like, you know, the things that Mike was saying, the interaction in the neighborhoods, to the authenticity of everything, to really, like, when you actually get to the ride, it's pretty compelling, like, once you get to it. Like, I think, and Mike, you didn't get a chance to, and God, I wish you did, but Amy, why don't you tell us more about, like, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey? I mean, that ride's been out for, like, a while, but, and you hadn't been there, but, like, what was it like going on that ride? Because to me, technologically, that's the best ride at Islands of Adventure. So what do you think?
I mean, at the end of the week, you know, we kind of did our recap of what our favorite rides were, and, you know, and Mike asked me, and that was the one I said, and I said, you know, it was I think for multiple reasons. One, it was a very cool ride, and it had a lot of moving parts and different things that happened throughout the ride, as opposed to just like one thing that you do throughout. It had the 3D, but then it also, you know, I don't know, you know more about the technical aspects, and so you can speak to that. But the other part of it is because it's something that I connected to, the story. You walk, as you're going through the castle to get to the ride, you're walking through the castle, and all these things that you remember from the books, you're like, oh my gosh, there's, you know, the spiral staircase, and there's the pensive, and all these things that, like, bring you into the experience that they wouldn't have to do. It could just be lines, and then you get on the ride. But all of the rides, whether it was the Mummy or Poseidon's, Poseidon's Fury, all of them, even as you approach the ride, you are completely brought into the experience and submerged into their world. And I just thought that was great. You know, they're all the people who operate the rides are dressed in character for the world that they're from. You know, Mike talked about, well, it wasn't on here, but we talked about what Drew's favorite ride was, which was the one about the Hippogriff, Flight of the Hippogriff.
Oh, sure.
You know, and so they're in character, and then you go to the dragon, the 2 dragons, and they're wearing what the dragon riders would have been wearing, or the dragon, whatever they were.
The Wizard tournaments, like the.
And so, like, they're in the actual uniforms that you would see them in if they were doing that job. And it's just everything about it completely brings it into the world.
Really big commitment to the story. You know, Mike, I don't know if you noticed, but when you go by, and you should have noticed because you went on the ride, I think 7 times in a row at one point. Did you notice that? Did you notice that the Hippogriff bows to you?
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant, again, because I'm not a Harry Potter person.
Right.
But Amy mentioned it at one point when we were on the ride early, I think the first or second time we rode it, and so I made sure the kids knew, and Drew by the end was, you know, bowing each time. and you know, it was very, very cool, very neat. You know, and they had Hagrid's house that you're kind of flying around in the thing, and, you know, just very, very cool. I mean, and it's not just the Harry Potter. I mean, the Harry Potter stuff is it's the newest stuff there, so they've taken it, as you pointed out, Richie, to another level. And I do agree because I've been to all 6 of the major parks in Orlando now in the last 2.5 years. But you know, Disney does some really great stuff too, and you know, maybe we could talk about that some other time. But you know, most of the really new rides that I had not been to at Universal, I would say, are on par with Harry Potter, at least experience-wise. You know, at least part of the way. The Minion ride at Universal Studios is tremendous. The Despicable Me Minion ride. You know, you get very funny, interesting TVs in the queue outside, but then you go into the main room and Gru's kind of yelling at you as you're getting lined up, and then you go into another holding room, and there's this really fun story with the Minions and him designing the spectacular thing you go on. And then the ride itself, even though it's just a seated 3D sort of the chairs move kind of ride, it's really fun. You know, it's really immersive and fun and interesting, and it's, you know, it's not as awe-inspiring as the Harry Potter stuff, but it's really great. You know, so there's lots of and Jurassic Park has been there forever, and you know, the Jurassic Park Center is still pretty cool, and the Jurassic Park ride, I think, is still pretty cool, even though one of the dinosaurs needs a little bit of tender loving care. He has a little tear in one of his legs, but for the most part, that, you know, I mean, Drew had been on it 2 or 3 times, and the last time he went on it, it still freaked him out. So, you know, they do a good job there. It's a fun place to go, and it's a good experience. I recommend people go there for vacations. It's a good time. But if you do go to Universal, you need to stay on property so that you can get front of the line passes, because otherwise you're going to stand in line 3 times longer, 4 times longer than you need to.
Yeah. And mind you, those tickets actually, as of right now, we don't know about the future, will not apply to any of the Harry Potter rides. So don't.
Well, not the main ones yet.
Right, exactly. So for the other great rides, you know, we were talking about what's great, like those summer blockbuster movies. The Mummy, I remember, was one of those movies that came out in like the late '90s, I think, and that's the ride that actually overtook King Kong. And if I have a suspicion, if Harry Potter is the best, if the Hogwarts, the Forbidden Journey is the best ride in Islands, then at Universal Studios, I would say that even though I haven't been on it, Gringotts, the Escape from Gringotts would probably be like the best ride. But the Mummy is a very, very underrated ride. And Mike, you didn't get a chance to ride that because for whatever reasons, you know, the little Beatles.
Yeah, well, 2 reasons. I would have gone on it if everybody was tall enough, but Drew needed to go on something and not just wait outside by himself. So because there's
I'll do that one. So.
I don't like bugs, I decided to skip that one.
Amy, if you hadn't been on, have you ever been on that type of ride? What's up?
I do like those movies, especially the first one. The first one's great.
Oh, the first one is fantastic. I could have done without the third one, but the first and second ones are pretty good. Now, Amy, you know, we were talking about how those great summer movies. Now, have you ever been on a ride like The Mummy before? Like, did that ride like really just like, was that just something crazy you haven't seen before, or what did you think about that particular ride at the theme park?
Like, so I've never been on any kind of 3D experience in the last, 15, 20 years, and so what I thought a 3D experience was nothing compared to these. These were, heads and tails above what I expected. The thing I liked about The Mummy is it combines the 3D movie experience type thing that you get with like Transformers and Spider-Man and stuff like that with an actual roller coaster. Now, albeit it's a much smaller scale roller coaster and it's not super high, but it does twist and turn, and it's in the dark. So it combines, like, it reminded me a lot of like a Space Mountain type experience where you really can't see what's coming, and so you can't really prepare yourself for it. So, I mean, it was kind of like the best of both worlds. It combined, for somebody who likes roller coasters and enjoys the 3D experience, it was kind of, a merging of the two. So I thought it was very, I do think that some of the inside stuff was not as high quality as some of the newer ones. But there again, there's going to be updates on the newer ones that are going to have much, better technology. So.
Yeah, that ride would be like if you combine Pirates of the Caribbean with Space Mountain. Mm-hmm. And literally threw in whatever element when you wanted to. It could be super slow at one point, and then it would into a roller coaster crazy. You went forwards, backwards. The special effects that they tried to do, there was even a little gotcha moment, and at the end of the ride, and so overall, I think Universal is in a good way. It's really going to give a lot of competition. I think it's going to be chaotic right now, especially probably for like the next, because you have rabid fans for like the Harry Potter series will be coming to it. But I think where it comes to entertainment, I'm glad that the theme parks, especially Universal, have done such a good job to reach out and make things so authentic. For each one of the visitors, like they really took that cue from Disney. Like if you tell the right story, and I'm sure they did off their own accord, but they were pretty lucky. Warner Brothers owns the rights to the books for the movies, and so you easily could have had that at Six Flags, and it probably would have been terrible. But Universal was really, really lucky to get that property, and it's interesting now because they're still allowed to do Marvel superhero rights, even though Disney owns Marvel. So I'm anxious to see if, with the success that everyone's seeing with Universal Studios, how's Disney going to respond. I suspect that they were going to do something with either Star Wars or Marvel. If I think they played it right, they would do stuff with Marvel to really, really play up on these movies while they're kind of, while we're not too bombarded with Marvel stuff. Like, we're still at that point where we're getting like 1 or 2 Marvel movies like a year. In the future, we're going to have it on Netflix, we're going to have it on TV, we're going to have it in the movies, we're going to have it, you still have like the regular comic stuff. I really think, I fear that Marvel's going to become too much, but hey, who knows at the end. So, all right, guys, what future movies do we have coming up? Mike, what's the big movie that you're excited about seeing?
Well, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is the movie I'm most excited. I don't think I've been as excited for a movie that I can remember, except maybe Jurassic Park 2, because I really loved Jurassic Park and I was such a dinosaur kid. I can't remember being as excited for a movie as I am for Guardians of the Galaxy. But I'm also really excited for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It's coming out in 2 days. By the time this is up, because this is late on Wednesday the 9th, so it probably won't be actually up for anybody until tomorrow sometime. It'll be coming out that night. So it's got 98% right now on Rotten Tomatoes, which is extraordinarily high. That's award-winning high. There's already talk about Andy Serkis, who played Gollum, Smeagol in the Lord of the Rings trilogies and in the first Hobbit movie. He played King Kong in King Kong, and he was Caesar in the first movie. He's the motion capture sort of master. And he's doing some Marvel motion capture stuff now, too. There's talk about him for Best Actor. Getting at least a Best Actor nomination for this movie. So I don't know if that'll happen. I haven't seen it. I don't know anything about it. I liked the first one, even though it did have, what's his name, who I don't like? I don't remember. The Harry Osborn from the first Spider-Man movies.
James Franco.
Yeah, James Franco. I don't really care for him, but he was good in that. And the first one was a good movie. This has really high potential, so I will definitely be seeing it shortly, and I may even see it tomorrow. We'll see. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Amy, what about you? Any movies that you see that maybe you're looking forward to at all that's going to be coming out?
I mean, there's a lot on deck this summer that I would like to see. I mean, I'm trying to think what. I mean, Earth to Echo looks really good, but I've heard that it's not really as good as previews let on, so that kind of worries me a little bit. Guardians of the Galaxy looks fun. What else? I'm trying to think. Lucy, I'm a little excited about just from the female aspect of it. But most of my big ones are more fall releases and early winter. I'm super excited about oh gosh, what's it called? Not Catching Fire. The third.
Mockingjay?
Yes, Mockingjay. So that's my big, hit for the year. So even though it was the least of my favorite of the 3 books.
I gotta say, actually, I'm Mike in this case, in that I haven't read anything about Hunger Games, and I haven't actually seen any of the first 2 movies. I think I watched 10 minutes of one scene from the first one, and that's about it.
You should
So
watch
really,
them both. You should watch them both. The first one is, I mean, it was really great in the theaters because about half of the movie is in the Hunger Games
okay.
themselves, and the way it's shot, you know that everyone except one person dies because that's the rules. And so you know going in that I don't know if there's 20 or 25 or 30 or how many people there are in it, but you know that all of these people are in constant peril, and so you're really on the edge of your seat for an hour or more. And then the first part of the movie is really good at building the world. The second movie, the one that came out last year, is way better a film than the
Okay.
first film is. And so if you can get yourself through the first one, you'll be really richly rewarded. The second one is really great. There's some incredibly powerful scenes early in the movie as they take their train into the main, I don't remember what the capital's name is. And
So
then
like,
the games themselves are very interesting. There's some very interesting, fun characters. They flesh out many of the characters that were in the first movie that return. It's good. You should watch them. You'd like it.
so they do a pretty good job with the exposition in the first movie, and then you don't really have to deal with it in the second movie, so you can kind of just
The
go right away.
there's plenty of exposition in the second movie, but it's all focused in the narrative and part of the plot, and
Okay.
it has purpose. That movie when that movie ended, I was like, fuck, I don't want it to be over. Give me
Right.
and
And
that's
for you, Richie, as a, I know when we talk about a lot of the comic book movies, you like when they stay true to the story. They do and you haven't read, and I don't know that Mike's even read the books, but I've read the books, and they do a very, very good job of staying true to, at least, I mean, there are certain things they had to deviate from because visually
Sure.
you can't create that visually in a movie, in a 2-hour movie that you can do in a 300-page book. But they do a very good job of staying true to the characters and the original plot pieces and stuff like that. So,
Amy, do you recommend that I read the books first, or can I go ahead and watch the movies?
the movies are good enough, and I read all 3 before I saw the first one, but I don't know that you would have to. There are certain movies where I'd say absolutely, hands down, read the book before you see the movie. This is not one of those. I think
Okay.
if you saw the movies and you enjoy them, it's definitely a good read, and worth your time, because there's a lot more detail in the books, obviously, than is in the movies. But
Is there, and I don't know much about the series, is it only 3 books?
it's 3 books, yeah. But
Okay.
and Mockingjay, for me, was the weakest of the 3 books. But part of that is because of what the plot is about. It's mainly the war between the capital and the individual, whatever they're called, the districts. And so the other ones had a much richer story, and there was a lot more going on visually and plot-wise, whereas this one's, it's like a battle scene for the whole book, basically, of how they, what happens and stuff like that. So it wasn't as good a story for me, but a lot of people really liked Mockingjay, the book Mockingjay.
For me, Richie, I haven't read the books, and so I don't know what the plot in the third movie is, other than what Amy's told me. It feels very similar to me to the way Matrix is. The first Matrix was cheaply done, but it was revolutionary and interesting. The second one was a similar kind of almost retelling of the first story, but it added a lot more to it. It fleshed a lot of things out, and the third one was kind of the apocalypse epic thing. And I sort of expect that that's what we're getting here. Although I think they're splitting that last movie, or book rather, into 2 movies.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're going to do that, but we'll see.
Oh boy. Well, it's hard to make like this money. So anyway, guys, just want to thank everyone for listening again. I know that we're a pretty young podcast amongst the CF ones, but if you like to hear our conversations or agree or maybe disagree with some of our stuff, check us out on Facebook, leave a comment, read our reviews. Mike has some great reviews coming up there. Amy, I'd like to see a review from you, maybe about the Transformers movie or something like that, like who knows. If you guys get a chance to, wait till the chaos goes down, but definitely recommend. It's definitely a year to visit Universal Studios. If you have a spare $45 around, buy yourself a wand. It's a great souvenir that can actually interact with the park. I don't care how far away you leave. It's a pretty cool thing anyway. And just want to thank everyone again for listening to Exit the Donut again, and we will catch you in a couple weeks when we'll go ahead and review some stuff about the apes. I'm sure we'll have a couple other movies, and then And then with that, actually, when does how far away is Guardian of the Galaxy?
Guardians of the Galaxy comes out August 1st, which for me means July 31st.
Exactly. So
I might take the day off on August 1st so I can watch it 2 or 3 times, before the end of the day.
absolutely.
So we will definitely do a podcast for Guardians. I don't know whether we'll do one for before that. We'll see.
Well, maybe we can add elements of the other movies, so we'll kind of save it till then. But again, thank you everyone for listening. Hope you like it. Catch us on Twitter. We got a lot of other handles on there as well. Thank you so much, and we will catch you in a little bit. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.